All right, we might get started. Welcome everyone. My name is Timothy, and I'm the manager of the educational media team here at Italy. Well, we still have a few more people coming in, so I'll just keep admitting people as they come through. Oh, we've got a flurry of people coming. This is great. Fantastic. So my name's Timothy, and today we're going to talk about editing media inside Adobe Premiere. So Adobe Premiere is an incredibly powerful program and a professional grade program. And the reason that we're wanting to go down this route of giving you skills in this kind of program is because this program works very, very well with all the templates that UQ provides for branding, so they all fit in really well with Premiere. And also, I think it's important to sort of push people's skills past the basic kind of video editors that are out there, like Rush or iMovie or such. Not that there's anything wrong with those, and the skills that you'll learn in this particular session will translate really well to that. Yeah, I just feel Premiere has really, really great capabilities and is much more sort of compatible with all the university's templates that are approved for use in teaching and learning. So I'll bring up my my PowerPoint so we can just talk through a little bit more detail about what we'll be going through today. All right, so just double check that everyone can see and hear the slides and hear me all okay. Some thumbs up. Awesome, getting some thumbs up there, that's great. Awesome, fantastic. Great, cool. All right. So yeah, Peter will be monitoring, Peter Rutherford, he'll be monitoring the chat on my behalf. So if you have any questions that you'd like to put in the chat, and he will sort of pop up and I can address those as we go along. All right. So editing educational media in Adobe Premiere. So what we'll be going through today. But first of all, of course, I want to do acknowledgement of country. So the University of Queensland acknowledges the traditional owners and the custodianship of the lands on which we meet, and we pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue to develop good cultural and spiritual connections to country, and we recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. So today I'm going to walk you through the basics of video editing inside Adobe Premiere. So basically all the way from actually importing your files into Premiere, laying them up on the timeline, a little bit of basic color correction, also a little bit of audio correction as well that I should have added in there. Making sure we're, of course, utilising the UQ approved templates and sort of learning about how to export your video as well. So that's an incredibly important part of this, is how to export your video in a format that's very compatible with lots of learning platforms, but also remains quite good quality. So if you're in my session yesterday, I sort of talked a little bit about pre-production and production when it comes to creating content for video. So pre-production essentially covers all the planning and the script writing of a production and essentially choosing a format. So how is your video going to play out? What is it going to look like? And so that's sort of one part of it. And then obviously production is where you actually come to filming the video, whether it's filming with a phone or you have much higher end equipment, and recording any kind of voiceovers and things like that as well. So the next step after this is, of course, we go into post-production. So this is where you copy your files to the computer, you arrange them in a structured folder, and that's one thing that's incredibly important, is keeping the integrity of your folder structures intact, because if images are moved or videos are moved or renamed, they can get lost, and the software simply can't find it. And obviously importing stuff into Premiere, utilizing the approved templates. Selecting the certain parts or the clips or the sections of your video that you want to keep, because oftentimes you'll do one of two things. You'll record a big long piece of video, and that needs to be chopped up into the sections that you need, or you might have little clips from multiple times that you filmed, and you'll be chopping those up and bringing those into your timeline. So there's a few different ways you can do it. And then editing graphics is required. So we have, and I'll be using the UQ approved template today. So how to edit that. So how to put a title at the start, how to edit a name banner that goes across when a person starts to speak. As well as there's like UQ, what we call an end plate, which is a UQ logo at the end. So keeping it all within brand, and color correction, audio correction, as I mentioned before. So that's how the general sort of post-production process comes across. So so this is all recorded. So of course, this isn't a practical session. You don't have the software in front of you editing as I'm speaking. So I'm going to be sort of talking through how you bring your footage in, lay it up and export it out. And then essentially after this session, I will actually be able to send you the Premiere template that we use. And then what you can do is by rewatching this, you can have a bit of a practice and in creating your own production. So the template that I'm using in this session today is actually exactly the same template that we use here every day. So yeah, I'm very familiar with it, and it's a really nice and easy template to drop footage in and keep it all UQ approved. So I'm going to jump in and have a look at my folder structure. So this is the actual folder structure that I will give you as part of the template. And the reason we sort of use this folder structure is it keeps everything in clearly defined folders. So you know exactly where stuff needs to go, nothing's getting lost. And yeah, it's important to kind of keep everything within one nice area. So the first thing is, thank you. So the first thing I'll sort of talk about are these individual folders here. So what we tend to do is say, with your assets, assets are things apart from footage. So we have a folder called footage, and this is where we kind of put the actual video that we're going to be using, that we put any audio that we're using, etc. So this is sort of where the audio and video tends to sit, and we keep that a bit separate to what we call an assets folder. An assets folder is kind of where we just put everything else that's relating to this project. So it might be Word documents, it might be images, it might be, although images can go into the footage. So yeah, you probably put images inside footage, but assets is all the other stuff that goes along with it, because you have lots of other documents and things that might go along with it. Inside this folder, I do have something called essential graphics, and they will come a little bit clearer later on. But these are the approved graphics for Premiere timelines. That can be used. So this is the end plate that goes to the end of all the videos. And these are what we call motion graphics templates. And what these, but basically what you do with these is that you install them inside Premiere. So then you actually have access to these templates. So this is the template for the Italy intro, sorry, the UQ intro, the UQ super, which is the name banner, and also a voiceover with a super. So that is like a little animated voiceover graphic that you can actually use if you just got voice and you want some sort of nice animated graphic. So I'll show you how to install those in a moment. Now, the funny quirk about Premiere is that I've actually got a Premiere template, and don't worry about these other folders here. They're just sort of folders that Premiere just creates on its own back. But yeah, funny quirk about Premiere is that this is the Premiere project file. And when I open that up, you'll notice when I open it up, it already has everything in there. Like it will have that intro in there. It will have that name banner. It will have the logo at the end. So that's already kind of in there for you, even though you might not have actually installed any of these just yet. And that's a funny quirk in Premiere, that it kind of does bring along any kind of those motion graphics imagery along with it, with the file when you actually move it around. So you may not actually have to install any of these, because it might already be in this template and you sort of won't have to. But what you can do is if we open this up and you find that one of those graphics is missing, or it comes up with a bit of warning, or you might be wanting to just use those other graphics in a completely separate Premiere project that wasn't pre-created, then basically what we do is we can actually import those into Premiere, and I'll show you that process in a moment. The output folder, so that's where our final outputs live. So that's where our actual MP4 that we export out of Premiere lives. So when we actually come into the export process, that's essentially where we put the final output files. So what I'll do first is let's have a look at the footage that we're working with first of all. So today we're going to be doing a bit of a video on not nano computers. It's a qubit. So it's a quantum computer, but not quite. It's a qubit. It's kind of one small part of a quantum computer. So this is the footage we're working with. So it's someone who's actually talking through this qubit. They talk through the whole entire process. It is one shot. So this particular one was shot just in one long video, and then we can actually either go in and chop it up or use the whole thing as is. But there's also other footage as well that's a little bit closer up of the elements within the shot. So we've got a couple of clips that we can work with here. Recording. And the reason that they're in separate folders with ACAM and BCAM, that's just another way of nicely organizing your files. So ACAM just basically means it's the primary camera, and then whether it's a high-end camera or whether it's a smartphone or whatever, and basically just takes in the whole scene and is mostly the kind of shot that is used for most of the time. BCAM, this is where you can kind of put all your other shots, all the cutaway shots, and cutaways are just like close-ups or other shots of things. Now, of course, you may not have this stuff if you only have one camera. If you've only got one camera and you couldn't get close-ups during the filming, then maybe you get the close-ups afterwards, or if that's not possible, then maybe instead of this, you could zoom in on the footage during the edit. And I can show you that when we actually get into piecing our clips together. And we've also got a bit of voiceover file here as well. So say you had a piece of video and you wanted to add a voiceover to it. This voiceover was just created on a phone, or you could do a voiceover on your computer and record it to audio. There's also a bit of music here as well. Yeah. All right. So let's open up this Premiere template. So and see what makes it up. Wait for it to bounce around and do its thing. I think I just opened it up about 4 times then, but that's all right. It's really bouncing and thinking, bouncing and thinking. There we go. It got there in the end. All right. Actually, this is something that shouldn't have come up, but this is a side effect of maybe something that's been moved or something that's been renamed. So this is actually a good error that kind of is coming up here. So normally, if everything's in the right spot and where it should be, when you open up your Premiere document, you won't see a window like this. It'll just open up straight into Premiere. But sometimes if things go missing, this can pop up. And so this is a good lesson in that. So and it's actually telling me what's missing, and it's telling me that it doesn't know where that image is, but I do know where it is. So I'm going to point it back in the right direction. So I can have that clicked on. I go down to here and go locate. And then in my Premiere folder, so I've got to go to, I know that this is located in, I think it's in, no, it's in assets, I think, is it this one? So if I go into there it is, yeah. So this one I know is actually in assets. Okay, so that's fine. So I know where it is. I can go click on it, and I can go okay, and that'll relink, and it'll all be back to normal, which is fantastic. All right, now another warning that will pop up with this is something that you can just go okay and ignore. The PowerPoint template, sorry, the Premiere template that we're using here, it utilizes some fonts that you probably won't have. So Gotham is the sort of the official UQ font, but not everyone has a license to use that font. And so what we basically say with this is that, if you can get Gotham and you can actually apply for a license, and then that's great, but it's not necessary. And you have to talk to marketing communication if you want to actually get a license for Gotham and install it. Then this error won't come up. But what I would suggest is just not worry about it. It's a lot of fuss. It's okay just to literally click OK. And then the default font, which reverts to Arial in all these templates, is perfectly fine to use for your production. So I wouldn't sort of concern yourselves too much with having to fuss and go and get a license to use Gotham. So this is Premiere. So I want to talk a bit about the interface just quickly. So there's a few different panels going on with Premiere. And so some of them don't really come alive until you start clicking on things. So at the moment, you'll see this panel over on the top left isn't nothing really in here. Over here, looks like there's sort of stuff happening, but no real sliders or boxes that you can tick or move around because we don't have anything selected. When you start selecting objects in your timeline, this is where sometimes things can kind of activate. So with stuff that's actually on your timeline, like in this case, this is one of those motion graphics templates that I was talking about. This is the intro sting template. This is the super or the name banner template. And this is the end banner template, which essentially is just the UQ logo at the end. So as I said, this stuff doesn't really come alive in this area here until you sort of tend to sort of click on things. And this is essentially the effects control. So this is the area where you can have a clip selected and you can essentially, drag this around to move clips around. You can change the scale of your clips. You've got rotation, and I wouldn't worry about these other items here, but you've also got opacity, bring that down as well. So this is where you can kind of affect the parameters of your particular clip that you're currently working with. And so what I'll do is I'll just basically reset all of those, and you can reset all of those by pressing these little icons here, and they will reset all those parameters back to the way they were. All right. So yeah, as I mentioned before, this template does automatically have all these elements in it already, which is nice. But getting those elements in there, if they don't exist already, is where this Essential Graphics tab comes in over here. And then if any of these tabs here don't exist, then you normally just go up to Window and you can show them from there. So any window that you don't have that I speak about, you can actually go to the Windows tab here. So if these aren't already in your document, which they will be if it's a UQ template, but if you're creating your own production and you're not using the UQ template, but you still want to get access to these Essential Graphics elements, this is where you go over to Essential Graphics, go Browse, and then this is where you can actually go and browse your Essential Graphics. Now you can see that the UQ ones aren't actually in there. So even though they're in here, that I'm not actually in this thing here, which is a bit strange, but that's just because, as I mentioned before, that if it's a template, it tends to bring them along with it. But if you're creating your own and it doesn't have this, then what you can actually do is you can actually go down to the bottom here. It says Install Motion Graphics Template. Press the little plus symbol down there, and it will go into your Finder or your Explorer, and you can go in and you can find those Essential Graphics templates. And you can click on them, go open, and essentially it will then install it into your Essential Graphics area here, where that can be dragged and dropped into your timeline. So yeah, if you ever find that you're missing them or they get deleted out of here and you can't get them back, that's what you can do. You can install them and then add them back in. So this is where, you make all your controls to your actual piece of video in terms of moving it around and scale. Central area here is where you actually view what's happening with your particular production. So anything that you edit will pop up in this viewer up here. Over here is sort of the other menus that pop up when you're starting to do for more heavy editing, such as looking for Essential Graphics, working with sound, those kind of panels. Over here is your folder structure. So this is a folder structure that's been pre-made for you, and it's actually separate to the folder structure that's in your on your computer. So you actually have to create this inside Premiere, and you do that by just right-clicking and going New Bin, and that actually creates a folder inside here that you can put things in. So when you import video and import other things, they can go inside bins, which is kind of cool. All right. So I want to import those video files that I showed you before. So the way that we can do that is I can simply right-click on where I want those files to live. And for me, it's going to be in this assets folder here. So I right-click and I'm going to go to import. And basically I'm going to go up to my quantum computer, I'm going to go to my footage, and I'm essentially going to just select everything in this folder, but just by clicking and dragging, selecting everything in that folder. I'm going to go import. And then that actually has imported all that into my timeline, which is great. So there, all these clips are now ready to utilize within my production. All right. So in order to preview this footage, what I can do is I can double click, and this area now has now changed. So it was my effects controls, but now this area gives me a preview of the footage I just double clicked over here in my folders over here. And what that gives me the ability to do is actually then I can go through and what I call scrub. You can grab this little blue bar, you can move that along, or you can just play the footage.
Nitrogen atom and then a vacant spot.
And you can have a look through, and this is where you can start thinking about what parts of your footage you might want. Now, you might want the whole piece of footage, which is perfectly fine. If you want the whole piece of footage, you can literally grab the footage down here and just drag and drop it onto your timeline. The consequence of that at the moment, though, will be you'll see how it's kind of going over the top of that end plate image there of the logo. It means that when I drop it, it'll basically delete it. So actually what I'll do is before I bring anything in, I'm actually going to move that out of the way. And you can move things out of the way in your timeline by literally just clicking and selecting a selection around them like that. They're clicking and dragging, and I can click it. I just drag it up out of the way. It doesn't matter how far you put it up. It just gets it out of the way. So when you're dropping stuff into this area here, essentially you're not going to be deleting anything. And I might actually do this to the front as well, just moving that out of the way, because I'm going to have to put a few different pieces of video onto my timeline here. And what I mean by my timeline is that's what this area is here. So each of these little bars are basically different lines where I can actually put clips. So you'll see here that I can actually drag these clips all the way up through these timelines, or what they're called tracks. I should use the right terminology. They're called tracks. That essentially means that, when I bring footage in, I can stack it on top of each other. So it's not just all on one timeline and you have to overwrite and delete certain bits. You can actually stack clips on top of each other, and you can have heaps and heaps and stacks. I'm not sure how many stacks you can have. Like it can actually go past this, and you can actually add more and more. It could probably be up to 100 stacks. So yeah, you can stack them on top of each other and have quite complex productions. So getting those out of the way, that's kind of important. And then, as I said, if I want to drag the whole clip, I could just drag and drop it straight in like that, and it would come in, and I could plonk it there. But I want to do it in a bit of a different way. So I'm just going to press on that and delete. The way I'm going to do it is by actually selecting a certain section of it that I want. So I know in this particular video here, if I watch it through, that my video doesn't actually start till around about here. It's around about sort of the 10-second mark. And it ends around about here at the sort of the 2:38 mark. And so what I can do is I can tell Premiere, all right, I want to start my video clip here and I want to end it here. And the way we do that is I move my little blue, call it playhead, to just before he starts speaking. And then I can actually press I on the keyboard, and I is shortcut for in. And that's created what we call an in point. And you'll see the blue bar sort of is at that sort of 8-second mark. And I move my blue marker to where he finishes speaking, which is around about there. And I go O on the keyboard. And that's an unfortunate end, but we can fix that later on. Unfortunate face at the end. We can fix that later on. So what we can do now is we can actually click on this clip here, drag that down. And basically what we want to do is we don't have to position it exactly where it's supposed to be yet. We can move it later on. But if you wanted it to get it in the right spot, you can. And that right spot is just at this line here. Now, the reason that's the right spot is because you can see that we've got our intro video here. And then these bits here are actually a bit of a fade. So that's actually fading to black and then fading back in. And what that's doing is essentially just covering or bridging that gap where the video starts and having a nice transition to the start of the video. And then and then it pops up and then eventually disappears over time. All right. And so that's sort of the way you can put the clip in there. Now, of course, if the clip gets put in a different position, you can literally just click on it and move it to somewhere else. So that's not a problem at all. So what you will notice is we've actually got, now I talked about the fact you can have like multiple tracks here. You can also have multiple tracks down the bottom. And so what that is you've got your video, which is this top one here, and you've got your audio, which is this bottom one here. So, oops, sorry. So whenever you're moving your clip around, the video and the audio will stick together, which is really nice because that's what you want with this particular clip. You want it to stick together so it never goes out of sync. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that lines up nicely with my clip there, which it does. Just drag into place. I can press play to play the video.
Do you want to look inside a quantum computer?
Now, I find that there's a little bit too much of him kind of standing there before he starts. So what I'll do is I'm actually also going to zoom in. You can use this bar here to zoom into your timeline as well, which is great. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move my mouse to the start of my clip. And I want to actually have the video probably start just a little bit later. So maybe around about there. So what I can do is I can move my, cursor to the start there, click, and then as I move, drag that across, what that's doing is essentially hiding that piece of video and having it start a little bit later on. And then what I can do is I can click that clip, drag it to there, and now I can play it through.
Do you want to look inside a quantum?
And that's a bit of a better start. There's not so much sort of dead space at the start. Then what I can do is I can zoom out, or I can use the scroll wheel on my mouse and I can scroll across, or I can drag this bar here and I can go to the end and I can see, all right, well, at the end here, it's quite a lot that I actually realized I don't need. And you can tell by looking at the audio, you can see how the audio essentially stops there. And that's also a really good indicator of when there's lulls in the piece of video. You can actually just tell by the fact that there's no what we call the waveforms of the audio, which is awesome. So I can move to the far right, drag that in, and you'll see wherever I put my playhead here is actually where I can actually drag my clip to, and you'll see it kind of snaps to it, which means that I can do a really clean edit and that know exactly where that video is going to end. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit more and then move over just so I can see my entire timeline. And again, with this is kind of getting in the way now because you'll see that when a clip is above another clip, so this clip here is above this one, basically it means that it's going to be seen. So I'm just going to get that out of the way and fix that up later. The next thing I want to do is I want to bring in some of my other shots. So if I have a look at my B-cam shots and I double click on that, so this B-cam shot here is literally just the laser working inside. And so that's probably going to go towards the end because I know that he talks about the laser sort of towards the end of the production here. So I don't want to bring that clip in yet. I'll open up the other one. And okay, so this one here, okay, so this clip here was great because it was actually recorded at the same time as this other clip. So they're actually around about the same length. And this is one way that you can really make your editing process quite easy if you have multiple cameras, is the fact that you can have one camera recording the action of him speaking to camera. Oh, and you will notice that it is all quite zoomed in and cropped off. I'll explain that a little bit later as to why that's occurred and why that's good and actually a good problem to have. So they were recorded exactly the same time. One camera was on him speaking and one camera was locked off on the piece of equipment. And because I was getting audio on both cameras, what we can do is we can use Premiere to actually sync up the footage automatically. So we don't have to go in and try and line up the shot of the piece of machinery to be in time with the shot of him talking to camera. We can actually use a syncing option for that, which is fantastic. So again, with this, I can kind of do in and out points. I don't think I'll bother doing in and out points on this because I can't really tell where it starts properly. So what I'll do, I'm going to just drag the whole clip in. So I'm just going to grab it, drag it on. And you'll see you want to be very careful when you are dragging clips on because you don't want to overwrite the clips that are in there. So see if I sort of drop it on top of my other clip, that other clip's now gone. So I'll go undo that. You want to make sure that when you're dragging a clip that you sit it above. In terms of the video sits above the existing clip and the audio you'll see will actually sit below the audio of the other clip. And now both pieces of video are actually in there at the same time. But of course, they're not synced. So what's going to happen?
The qubit in this setup is
So you're going to have bad audio from this other clip and the nice audio from this mixing in with each other. So how do we sync these clips up? So what we do is we select both. So I'll click and make a selection like that. And it's just clicking anywhere and dragging. And then I can right click and I'll just scroll down so it goes down there. And I click something called synchronize. If I click that, what I can do is making sure that the audio button is ticked. So making sure I'm syncing audio because by default, it might be one of these other options. So if I make sure audio is clicked and I go, okay, what that's going to do is it's going to analyze the audio of all the clips in your timeline, which all the ones that were selected, and it's going to sync them up.
well, perhaps that's not a full quantum computer as such, but
So now they're both synced. And what's really, really nice about that is because this clip is on top of the other, I can then, by using my, my cursor, I can go to the edge of that, I can drag that in. And basically what's going to happen is no matter what I do with this, if I bring it back or I cut it up, it's always going to be in sync. So for example, if I play this through and I get to the point where he lifts up the piece of equipment, that's where this clip can actually start. So he moves over to that clip and he starts to lift it up. And so that's how we can continue this particular edit. And so, of course, we need to start chopping up this other clip because we don't want it there the whole time now. We want to make some cuts. So we'll do that in a moment. But first, let's address the whole why is everything so zoomed in thing. So the reason this footage is so zoomed in is because I'm currently working in what we call a full HD timeline. And that means that it's 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels high, or you've probably heard the term 1080p or full HD footage. So that's what this timeline has actually been created in, and that's what we create all our videos in. But we film everything in what we call 4K. And so 4K is basically 4 times the resolution. And what we can actually do is because we're filmed in 4K and you drop that into this timeline, the actual footage is too big. So that's why it appears zoomed in. Now, there's actually a benefit to that. Now, the benefit is that with this clip here, if I click on it and I go up to effect controls and I go to position and I start dragging these values, and we won't worry about what these values mean for now. They're plot coordinates, but really all you need to worry about is that you click in and you slide that first number, it'll move left and right. You click in this and you slide that downwards, it moves up and down. But essentially what that gives me the ability to zoom in on my shot without losing quality. And that's a really, really great way of, if you've only got the one camera, you can make it look like multiple cameras because at certain points throughout your production, you can actually zoom in on your footage without losing quality. Whereas if you filmed it at 1080, 1920 by 1080 pixels, and you brought it into a timeline that was 1920 by 1080 pixels, and you zoomed up, you'd get blocky, yucky footage. So that's sort of something important to note. Now, for me, I don't want to use any of that zoom footage yet. I just want it to be zoomed all the way out. So I'm just going to click that button there to reset it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set both of these clips just to shrink so they fit the window. And the way I do that is I right click on my footage, go down, right? And I go set to frame size. And what that does is it's basically scaled it to 50%, which is, and as you can see, if I actually drag that, you can see what's happening. But essentially it drags it to 50% size, which fits the size of the window. I can do the same thing for this one. Click on that, right click, scroll down, set to frame size. All right. And now that looks a little bit better. I'm going to just zoom in a little bit on my timeline here and make some adjustments. So I'm going to move that over a bit. So he walks towards it, cuts to that clip. And then essentially what we'll do is we'll have him talking for a little while. And then maybe I want to cut back to this clip here. So the way that we do that is we can go over to here to where we have what we call the razor tool. And so if I click on the razor tool, it brings up essentially a razor. And what I can do is I can move that to any point within that clip, that top clip. And when I click, it's actually made a bit of a cut. So what I can do with that cut is I can go back to my selection tool, which is this is on my tool panel here, and then I can then go over to here and then just drag that along out of the way. So I'm not moving it. So there's a bit of a difference. Some people get a bit confused by clicking and dragging like that. That's different to clicking on the edge of the clip where you have the little red indicator and you drag it that way. That's hiding that footage. Whereas if you just click directly on it and drag, you're moving the whole footage, which will make it go out of sync. So now what'll happen is this will play along, cuts to that clip.
Well, perhaps that's not a full quantum computer as such, but it's a qubit, which are one of the essential elements of a quantum computer. A qubit being...
It cuts back to him. So one thing we should address quickly is the audio issue. You'll see now that I've actually still got the audio playing from that B-roll cutaway shot, which is really yuck, and it doesn't sound good because it's a crappy microphone. So to get rid of the audio for that, there's sort of two ways that you can do it. And it probably is best to not actually delete the audio, but just completely mute it, because you may want to need to resync it later on. And if you delete it, it becomes problematic. So it's a bit hard to see, and I'll actually expand this audio track out so you can see it. You'll see on these tracks, they have this line. There's a bit of a line there. That's the volume line. So what I might do with these audio of these clips here is just go to that line. You'll see my cursor changes. Click, drag down, and that's just going to mute that track. So if I click that, drag down, all the way down, and then basically I'm playing it, and I'm not hearing that other track at all.
Well, perhaps that's not...
And so what I can do is I can go through and I can basically identify certain areas within my video where I want this other clip to appear. Now, it can be a bit annoying because if that clip is there, it's hard to know when he's actually referring back to it. So what you can do is you can actually go along and actually hide that layer. So what I can do there is I can hide it, and then I can sort of get my blue scrubber here, my playhead, move that along, and just every so often where he sort of refers to things. So, you know, around about there, he's sort of referring to it. What I can do is I can get my blade tool, I can click, and I can say, all right, well, he's sort of talking about it there, finishes about there. Get my blade tool again. And I'm going to keep that clip in, and I'll move along, and he refers to a little bit here as well. Cut. Cut. All right, and he sort of refers back to there as well, but there's another clip that I might put there later on. So I've got these cuts in, so what do I do there? So I go back to my selection tool, and I'm like, all right, well, he doesn't refer to it there. So I click on that bit of the clip and I delete it. Oh, and now I can actually unhide my timeline, so I can actually, my track, sorry, so I can see the edit. So he refers to it there, points to it, that's fine. Here he doesn't, so I can click on that section, press delete. Now it goes back to that shot. He refers to it, that's great, fantastic. And then I can then go in and, yeah, that's great. Now, I was thinking about deleting this shot, but there's actually some other footage here that I need to use later on. So I can actually then just go in, and because I know there's a point in this video where he starts talking about cutting closer and actually having a look at what's happening on the screen. So I know I need this shot at the end of that clip to put up. So I'm just going to cut that to suit and put that at the end where he starts talking about what's happening on the screen. So I've got a bit of a closer shot. All right. So in the interest of time, I might skip sort of adding any more kind of little tidbits to that, because there's a few other things that I want to talk about in terms of editing these titles, maybe doing a little bit of color correction, a little bit of audio correction. But I will just quickly talk about adding this other clip. So you'll see we've got this other clip here that actually talks about, shows the little green bit coming up the laser. I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. Just go to there, make my in and out points, drag that in to the point where he starts to talk about that element in his speech. All right, so it cuts to the green. And I might actually not zoom that back out. I might leave that at zoomed in because it gives me the ability to get in a lot closer. And then my clip can actually end there. So now I might tidy some stuff up. So I might move this sort of into where it needs to go. So, and what I mean by that is have it start where it needs to start, which is around about here. So I might click and drag that selection around all of that and then move that so it starts where it needs to start, which is a little bit too far. There we go. So have it start there, which is great. Plays through. And I'm going to put my graphic at the end, which is this bit here. So I'm going to click and drag that and put that at the end. And then, so a little bit like the start, that has these elements here, these purple little, they're just purple graphics. So it's a layer of purple graphics fading in and fading out. And they just so nicely go together, sort of fade from there, fade into the logo, which is great. So to make edits to these, and I'll actually click those and bring them down so it's a little bit more neater. To edit any of these, what we call essential graphics templates, basically you click on them. So you click on the clip in the timeline, and then you can go over to your essential graphics tab over here on the right, and you can go in and you can make any edits to it. So I don't know if this is how you spell qubit, but anyway, it's probably spelled with a Q, I don't know. And then then I don't need the medium text, don't need the smaller text. And so you can give that a name. You also have options there for whether you want, actually, no, this is not approved. So make sure that you don't use the white text on transparent. That's only if you've got an image behind. You want to use the white text on purple, purple text on white, and white text on jacaranda. So don't use those first two. That's only if you have animated graphics in the background, which you guys don't have access to and is not OMC approved if you sort of use your own imagery and stuff. So only use those last three and just choose which one you like. The same goes for this banner here. Basically, you can put the presenter's name. All right, so this is John Person. All right. He is a senior lecturer. All right. And he's from the, actually you can't put school of in these things. You have to put whatever his school is. I don't know. I'm just going to do that for now. I forgot what school he's from. But yeah, in videos, you can't put school of in their super. It's a really weird thing. So you just have to basically just put the school name rather than school of. It's an OMC regulation. And then so on the surface, that's sort of the video kind of all come together. But there's a few little things, little tweaks in there, here and there that you might want to make. So what happens if the audio is too low? So if I play this through, carbon atoms, is the audio too low? Two of the carbon. Now, what is too low? Well, what we kind of suggest is you'll see when you play video, nitrogen atom and then a vacant. You've got this green bar here that pops up. Spot next door. And that's showing the volume of your video. Now, what we kind of suggest for any kind of videos that you produce is try and have this NV center, so at the loudest point, it's hitting around about that -6. A set of so between -12 and -6 there, which this video is. So I don't need to adjust the volume of it. But if I did, what I could do is go over to my essential sound area, which can be accessed if it's already up, or go Window, Essential Sound. And then I select what kind of audio it is. In this case, it's dialogue. So I click dialogue. All right. And then here is the clip volume. And this is a really easy way to adjust the level of your video. So if I play that through a set of, and I adjust this, you'll see what happens. The lower that level, the lower the green bar. That we manipulate and use as our qubit. You want to avoid, in this particular setup, you want to avoid going into green laser light to read out the state. If you needed to move this up, just move it up of the qubit until you're getting it between -12 with the electrons to high, hitting -6. Now, one other little thing you can do is you can repair the clip. So this particular video has a bit of background noise. So what I can do is I can go into repair and I can do something called reduce noise. Now, there's a lot of other things in here you can investigate in your own time, but reduce noise is really handy because I can click on that play the footage through,
we manipulate and use as our qubit. In this particular setup,
now it's hard to hear on your end, but basically without that,
we use green laser.
there's a bit more background sort of noise in the background, but when you click reduce noise, it sort of gets rid of that. I would say 5's a bit high, because the higher this is, the more robotic it gets. So what I would say is probably try it around about sort of 2 to 3 to 4, and just try and get a nice balance. So remove the noise, but don't have it sound robotic, which is what can happen when you start getting up quite high. So use a bit of your discretion with that. Now, what happens if you want to do a bit of color correction? So you want to go in and you think, well, this video maybe needs to be brighter, darker. Of course, Premiere has incredible facilities for that. So again, I have my clip selected. And so you'll see if there isn't, we want to look for the lumetri color. And lumetri color is where you can color grade your footage. And so basically that tab isn't there, or you can't access it by clicking the arrow. You can always go to window and find lumetri. And basically, it has a lot of sliders. Now, I wouldn't worry about any of these other sliders down here. I'd sort of predominantly sort of focus on things like the temperature and the saturation and the exposure and such. Now, these are kind of really up to your discretion. If you feel like a video is a little bit underexposed and needs to be brighter, then you might choose to brighten it up a bit. All right. If you feel that a piece of video is a little bit cold, you might want to drag this temperature and make it a little bit warmer. Or a nice little shortcut is you can use this eyedropper here, click on that, and click on something that's white within the scene. So it tells the computer what's white, and it'll adjust the color accordingly. In this particular case, oh no, I think I was just clicking on the wrong shade of white. Yeah, it's very iffy. So if I try the wall, oh, it's not too bad. But yeah, just use your own discretion here. If you want it a little bit warmer, it's probably better to either click on something that's really pure white, or what some people do is they have a piece of paper in the scene that they hold up before a shot that they can use an eyedropper for. But you know, you can warm it up. You might want to pump up the light a bit. Maybe it's a bit dark. Maybe it looks a little bit flat, so you might want to pump the contrast up, which kind of richens the black and just sort of makes it a little bit more richer. All right. And highlights. So highlights tend to sort of mess around with the overall sort of brightness of bright parts of an image. Shadows tend to sort of darken the darker parts of an image. The whites tend to sort of really blow out the really white parts of an image, whereas the blacks tend to really darken just the really black parts of it. You'll see just the computers kind of be affected by that. So again, sort of use these at your discretion. In my particular case, I probably only really want to just use a bit of contrast, and maybe just maybe want to just make the shadows a little bit, or the darker parts a little bit more rich. So I might just adjust the shadows. There's a whole color science behind this, and I can't delve into it too much. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, do a bit of research about what these different things do. There's a whole another sort of world with color correction that you can go down the rabbit hole of. And also a thing to note here is that you know, if you're doing the same color correction to multiple clips, what you can do is you can click on the clip that I just color corrected, which is this one. I can go edit, copy, and then what I can do is I can then do a selection like this, and you'll see how that's actually selecting all those other clips that I've got on my timeline. And I can go to edit, I can do paste attributes. And this is really handy because what I can do there is I can say, all right, what am I wanting to paste? That didn't work. That didn't work at all. Why didn't that work? Edit, copy, select all the clips, edit, paste attributes. There we go. That's better. So if I want to, I can paste the effects that I did. So if I have multiple clips that have audio on it that I want to paste exactly the same audio changes, I can tick that box, and it'll, when I go okay, it'll paste all those audio changes. And the same with all these other properties, it'll paste it. In this particular case, I just want to paste the color correction. So I can untick all of that, go okay, and it's actually pasted that color correction to all those other clips, which is really handy. All right. In terms of adding voiceovers to your clips, so say you recorded a piece of video and it didn't have any audio in it, so it might just be shots of this that you've voiced over later on. So you've recorded a voiceover on your phone, or you've recorded a voiceover in your computer with a microphone. that just gets treated as an audio file, which is exactly the same. You can double click on it. You can go through, it'll appear like this. You can go in, you can create in and out points like you did with the other footage. You can click. Actually, no, you can't drag it down. Sorry, that doesn't work with audio. You've got to click on this little audio waveform here with the hand, click and drag that down. And it basically that then becomes your piece of audio for the voiceover. And then of course you can go and you can start playing around with the volume of that again in the essential sound. And it's the same with music as well. So music will be treated exactly the same like this. You bring in a piece of music, you can do in and out points, drop it onto your timeline, and then essentially you can you can cut it and move it. Audio can be moved and cut exactly the same as you would with any other kind of clip. It just gets put in a different spot. So any video gets put above this line, any audio gets put below this line. So exporting it out, at the moment, it's just a video file. It's not anything that can actually be used. So as in users in putting on Blackboard or YouTube or whatever. So let's get it ready for that. So one thing we need to do is give it a proper name. At the moment, I've just got ABC123. So we'll give it a name. Again, I think that's spelt wrong, but let's run with it. If I'm going to be wrong, I'm going to be consistently wrong. So give it a name, Qubit Computer. And now what we want to do is export that piece of video out. And so what we do is we make sure that this timeline is selected. And what that means is that it's selected by the fact that it has this blue bar around it. Because if I go somewhere else, you'll see how things will get selected as I move around. And if I go export, it won't do anything because it doesn't have a video selected. So if I have my timeline selected, I can go up to File, Export, and go to Export Media, or I can go up to here and go Export. So it gets to the same place. So if I click Export, what that does is it brings up quite a scary video with lots and lots of options and numbers flying around, but I'll keep it really, really simple. And the way I can explain it is I would suggest that if you're exporting out a piece of video that is just for standard teaching, you want to export it at a nice file size, a good quality, I would change the preset here. I would change that to high quality, 1080p HD. All right, so that's going to export it out as a high quality video file, but it's still going to have quite a high data rate, which means the file size is going to be quite big. In this case, it's going to be 338. So what we'll do is we'll actually reduce what we call the data rate, which is essentially how much data is required to run the video every second. And it sounds a bit scary, but it's literally just a rule. You can go preset, high quality, then you open up video. All right, ignore everything here, go to more, scroll all the way down, and where it says target bitrate, you can put that to 5. And it's gone from 300 and something megabytes to 88 megabytes. The quality is still really, really nice. That's the same quality that we export all of our videos out at. And it's a good compromise between large file size and quality. So it's good quality and quite a nice file size. So next thing is to location. You click this little blue text here to change the location of where you want it to be saved. I'm going to go into my folder structure. All right, I'm going to go to output, which is where I want my output to go. And I'm going to go save. And then once I've done that, I can click export. It'll have a little progress bar saying it's going to export out. It'll probably give you quite a high number initially, but that's just because it's probably rendering out some of the graphics at the start, and then it might get a little bit quicker as it goes along. So in this particular case, I don't think it's going to take 7 minutes. Oh, it might, because it's an older computer. So while we sort of wait for that, and it's going to get faster and faster. While we wait for that, I might open it up to some questions. Were there any questions in the chat, Peter, that you identify that?
No, there's been no questions. Luke said thank you very much because he had to be on his way.
That's all right.
But people might like to call in with questions.
Yeah, so are there any questions that people want to ask? You can even just unmute yourself or put them in the chat. It's up to you. If not, then what I'll do is at the end of this session, I'll be able to send out this template along with some information on how to install Premiere and things like that. And then if you have any further questions, you can certainly email me separately, and we can liaise that way. But yeah, so once it's exported, what I can do is I can go to my folder, go to my output, double click on it, open it up, and then I've got my video file. Nice quality, looks good, sounds good, and it's all within brand.
And we've got a couple of questions now, Tim.
Yeah, awesome.
Just let me go back up. You mentioned an OMC guideline / rule video. Is that summarized nicely anywhere or not nicely?
It's not summarized super nice. You can go to OMC has a UQ brand guide. So what you can do is you can go and search for the UQ brand guide. And inside that brand guide, it has guidance around how to create video and using the video templates. So that information is in there. There isn't super clear information on what I mentioned, like with the supers here or the name banners. That isn't explicitly in there. But generally, it's a case of with these is you put the person's name, you put the person's title, and then you put the school name there, but you don't put school of. Yeah, it's a weird quirk. It's just sort of a new way they're wanting to do it. So, so instead of school of mathematics and physics, it'd be literally just it'd be just mathematics and physics. My spelling's horrendous and I've got fat fingers. But yeah, so that's what you'd put instead of school of. Yeah, it's just OMC's rules. Yeah.
All right, and the next one, just wondering if you have to sync audio each time for different clips, as you didn't for the second camera B video. And just, Tim, I just might put up a poll now while people are still in the room, fine. Just as an opportunity to fill it in.
Yeah, so with syncing other clips, if you have a whole heap of clips that were filmed at exactly the same time and have audio in behind them that could be synced up, then absolutely, you would try and sync those up all at the same time. But the reason I didn't sync up that other clip is because that was actually filmed after the initial video was done. So it didn't have audio in there that would have synced up to the other clips. So I just kind of knew where that was going to go because I knew that at some point in his video, he was going to start talking about, the green laser. So I knew that green laser video just could be plonked at that particular point. But no, it didn't need to be synced up because there wasn't any audio in the background to sync it up. Yeah.
Right, and Kevin's been able to locate the summary that you were talking about.
Oh, awesome.
And Bree has put in a link to the marketing communications brand.
Fantastic. Awesome. That's great.
That's it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. So we can leave it there. If there's no more questions, there is a bit of a poll up that you can fill out before you leave. As I said, I'll shoot through some information. It's good someone was able to share that guide there. That's handy. And so I'll give this template. It'll just be like a SharePoint link. You can open it up and start utilizing it for yourself. And as I said, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, then certainly flick me back an email, and we can, we can liaise, and I can try and help you out as best I can or point you in the right direction.
Great.
Fantastic.
And lots of thank yous in the text as well.
Oh, awesome. We might just keep things going for a little bit longer, just as the poll and people sort of leave, so we can keep that poll up as long as possible. But in terms of translating skills, what's really nice about this program is you can translate the skills to all other programs, whether it's iMovie, whether it's a Windows Movie Maker or DaVinci Resolve or other free programs as well. The skills translate very well. It's all the same, bringing clips in, chopping them up, moving them around. Yeah, so no matter what program you use, they kind of work very similar, which is great. Yeah, cool. All right, thanks everyone. That seems like most people have exited and given feedback, so that's fantastic. So we might leave it there. Thank you, everyone.